I think the people that I get to work with day in, day out, the culture from the top down. We're a God-fearing, God-honoring company. He has blessed us, and to work in a place like that day in, day out is truly, I think, an exception in our country. That I wish we had more places like that.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce Pastor Mark Love of the Central Church of Christ, who will give our invitation today.
Let's pray. Father, we're so grateful for the city and the leadership that's here, the willingness for them to give up their time and effort and energy and their emotional resources to serve our city, to make many times very tough decisions. Also want to pray for the employees of the city, those that work so hard, especially in this heat, to take care of the citizens, to take care of the infrastructure here in our city. And so we just pray special blessings on them and their families. We want to lift our meeting up today, Father, that above all, that we keep in mind that we want to care and love people of our community. In your Son's name.
Thank you, Pastor. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Amarillo City Commission held on the third floor of City Hall this Tuesday at 3 p.m. The first item of business on today's agenda is the minutes from last week's meeting. That meeting is pertaining to July 24, 2012. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? In fact, there is a revision, correct?
Yes, I was with you in spirit, but I was not physically here last week, so I did not make any motion or second motion. So the correction is on item 1 that Commissioner Eads seconded the motion made by Commissioner Smith.
Okay. If there are not any other corrections, entertain a motion. Or you did make it.
Okay, I will move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All those in favor of the minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes with a 4-0 vote. The next item of business is a report and presentation. This item is a report of the Amarillo Local Government Corporation to the Amarillo City Commission on their activities and the status of the Amarillo Downtown Redevelopment Project, and an update from the project's developer, Wallace Bajali Development Partners, LP. And I'd like at this time to ask first Mr. Gary Pittner to come forward and from the LGC standpoint to give us that update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. Good afternoon. That's the first time Donna's ever done anything like that. Her storied history here at the City of Amarillo. Right? It is my pleasure as president of the Amarillo Local Government Corporation to be the lead-off batter in today's presentation to report to you on the status of the public-private partnership which you as a body set forth in motion in August of last year to develop a convention hotel, a parking structure with related retail space on the ground level, and a multi-purpose event venue all right here in downtown Amarillo, just a matter of a few feet from where we're meeting here today. I'll remind you that in a very real way, it's the local government corporation that is charged with representing the public side of that public-private partnership, and Wallace Bajali Development Partners represents the private sector side of that equation. David Wallace, Coastal Bajali, and Joe X are all three with us today, and David will be briefing you in just a moment from their perspective on the private sector side of our partnership project. You might remember when I last reported to you at the end of January, I asked for your patience as we were methodically at that time working through the construction, if you will, of the various and numerous and sundry agreements, contracts, leases, and documents necessary to underlie a project of this magnitude and this scope and of this nature. Thanks for granting us that time over the past several months as the involved parties have worked with their counsel and have waded through that kind of sometimes boring, grinded out, non-headline making detail work. I'm very pleased to report to you today that the detail work in terms of the documentation phase is substantially completed, laying the foundation for the hotel and the parking structure journey to move forward. The linchpin document for the hotel and the parking structure, the lease and development agreement, exists between the local government corporation and Wallace Bajali. It has been fully executed and is in place today as we speak. That lengthy document spells out in sometimes excruciating detail the terms and conditions surrounding the development, construction, and operation of the hotel and the 800-car parking structure. With the hotel and parking structure agreement in place, we now have timeline expectations for those two elements of the project in place as well. That timeline calls for the hotel grand opening as well as the opening of the parking garage to take place in the summer of 2015, or about 36 months from now. That 36-month period is roughly divided into two 18-month halves, if you will. The first half, or the next 18 months, will be occupied with such things as the developer finalizing the financing for the project, the development of the detailed construction plan specifications and drawings by the Wallace Bajali architectural team, and the selection by the developer of a contractor, in this case a construction manager at risk, to actually build the facility. The actual construction work will take the following 18 months of that 36-month window, and will begin in late 2013. So construction, per the lease and development agreement, will begin by late 2013. So that's off the checklist, that lease and development agreement. What we're calling the prime lease is also done. That document is between the city and the local government corporation. It leases the 2 square city blocks of city property just out of the Globe News Center to the local government corporation, so that we in turn could make it available to the developer per that lease and development agreement. With your favorable action today, there will be a number of other checks on the checklist completed. There will be an approved tax increment reinvestment zone agreement with your favorable consideration this afternoon, providing funds for streetscape enhancements of the public right-of-way around the entire development, the multi-purpose event venue, the hotel, and the parking structure. There will be a second approved tiers agreement with Wallace Bajali dealing with the reimbursement of 90% of a certain local ad valorem tax revenue associated with the hotel and parking structure. That will be in place. There will also be an agreement in place that is called an Economic Development Incentive Agreement. That's between the city and Wallace Bajali, which allows for the rebate to the developer of local hotel occupancy tax revenue generated at the property, the rebate of state hotel occupancy tax revenue generated at the property, and the rebate of state sales tax revenue generated at the project as well. Finally, in 2 weeks, it will be my pleasure to meet with the Executive Committee of Center City of Amarillo, Inc. To formalize via a contract document their previously agreed to financial commitment of $400,000 in support of the streetscape improvements associated with the project, in addition to the streetscape resources being provided by the tax increment reinvestment zone board. Ladies and gentlemen, as my attorney friends might say, this project is well papered, but it needed to have been. I'm very confident that the underlying documentation has been crafted in such a way that the public's interests have been well cared for. The LGC board, the 7 of us that serve on the LGC, certainly have taken that public stewardship responsibility very seriously, each and every step along the way, and that commitment to looking out for the public side of this partnership will continue as we move down the path to do our due in the implementation of the hotel and the parking garage relationship with Wallace Bajali, as well as beginning work in earnest on a similar lease and development agreement for the multi-purpose event venue, which is work yet to be done. Now, I don't want to overlook the more outward and visible signs of progress which have been made to date with the demolition, as the community is aware, of the old police department building, the former city jail, and the former municipal courts building across the street from us. Your city staff, in concert with our local gas, electric, and communications utilities, are also well down the road with a game plan to relocate the utilities between 5th, 7th, Buchanan, and Pierce, which is a pretty sizable project in and of itself. So, in summary here today, I think it's fair to say that the table has now been appropriately set for the initiation of the hotel and the parking structure elements, and the heavy lifting to now move these projects through implementation and through to successful completion now largely rests on the shoulders of the private side of the public-private development partnership, on the very capable development shoulders of the Wallace Bajoli development team. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I know David would like to spend a few minutes with you as well.
Do you have any questions from the Commissioner? Ms. Bitter, I'd like to thank you for your efforts for the city, yours combined with Richard Brown's and Mr. Parkey, in pouring through these documents and defining them and protecting the city and projecting a very successful project. Are congratulated. We thank you. I thank you on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mr. It's been our pleasure. And we'll continue to be open.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, honorable commissioners, Mr. City Manager, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon once again. Gary, I too would like to thank you and all of the local government corporation board members, the countless hours that you guys have put into not just the documentation, but the leadership that you guys have provided. So thank you for everything that you have done. As we approach the 1-year anniversary from when this astute body here approved the agreement, we remain excited, we remain extremely dedicated to moving this project forward. As Mr. Pittner indicated, the process of documentation has taken a little longer than I think any of us would have liked, but in the end, we believe that both sides wanted to ensure that we started off right, that we started off on a firm foundation with all of us fully understanding every bit of the documentation and the framework in which we operate under. And so I applaud everybody that took the time and the energy, and I know lawyers typically get a lot of jokes, but thank you for the leadership that you provided in moving forward on this documentation. Typically, the axiom that time kills deals is always a concern, but that said, our project is very much alive. As Mr. Pittner indicated, the underlying agreements on the hotel are behind us. The underlying incentive agreements are on the agenda for hopefully your approval this evening. We understand that the AEDC is moving forward with Coke, an agreement to allow the stadium to proceed, a multi-purpose event venue. We have provided the city with a draft agreement on the multi-purpose event venue as well, and we await comments back from the city. We've received comments back from the city on our architect contract. We've also drafted a contractor selection process, and we have received input back from the city on that effort as well. In short, there aren't many documents left for us to be able to move forward with and await approval. For our part, we have continued to work with the myriad of partners that we've brought to the table. The senior debt component has been awaiting these final documents in order to move forward, and they are now ready to move forward with this process. The new market tax credit, the solicitation packet, needed to be completed, and that is done now. And we are now out in the market securing those credits. We engaged an organization called Petros, which is out of Austin, that has raised some $800+ million of new market tax credits, and that is our consultant in connection with this. We also received a number of letters of support from this community that are a part of that packet. So they are now out in the market, and we anticipate receiving information from them probably in the next 30 days, definitely in the near term, as to what the dollar amount is from the allocation of the new market tax credits. And based on the word of our investment banker, we believe that the equity capital that they went out to secure initially, which was secured some time ago. They basically have made other investments with that equity. We now believe that our investment banker has secured additional equity capital and will be able to come forward with that part of the capital structure. So with this, along with the other things that Mr. Pittner mentioned, we are now poised to proceed with the schematic design. We are going to move forward with finalizing the new market tax credits and determining exactly what that component of the capital structure is, and then we'll be able to move forward and proceed with the programming. We anticipate also proceeding with the contractor selection process for the construction manager at risk, and we see the next 3 months basically being extremely critical. Mr. Pittner talked about the next 2 18-month segments, but the next 90 days are going to be extremely critical as well as we fine-tune and finalize all of the remaining component documentation, new market tax credits, the equity, as well as our senior debt. And obviously we look forward to being in front of the City Commission at the next quarterly meeting as well. As always, we do appreciate the confidence that this leadership and that this body has given to us. Obviously, there's been a lot of effort that has gone into over the last 9 to 12 months moving forward. And Mr. Mayor, what you indicated as far as the local government corporation, the countless hours, and there are hundreds of man hours that have gone into these documents. So we too take off our hat and thank them for that. We look forward to seeing this project truly become the success that we know it can be. And with that, I would love to open it up for questions as well.
Questions from the commission? Again, I thank you for the partnership, and I believe that the staff has worked very, very hard to along with our volunteer groups. We appreciate a lot of the efforts there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're looking forward to the next phases.
We are there.
Okay. Thank you all for your report. The next item of business is ordinance number 7344. This is a first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment on Point West Public Improvement District, PID. The Point West Public Improvement District is located adjacent to the Amarillo Medical Center in West Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Point West Improvement District Board of Directors. And I think we looked at that pretty thoroughly. Are there any questions in regards to the Point West Public Improvement District assessment? Anyone here in the audience would like to ask a question about that or give clarification? Anyone on the commission?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate the fact that all these public improvement districts have individual boards except Brenham, and that these are people that represent the homeowners there, and these are decisions that they make, and the City of Amarillo is simply the administrator of that, and therefore we are not really responsible for the proposals. We're just passing those through.
I think we are aware of the facts in the proposal and concur, as staff concurs, that it's a viable project and that it's funded correctly. Is that right, Mr. Shaw? That's part of your responsibility.
That's correct. With any of the expenses that go towards maintenance and operation, we verify those. We work with the developers when improvements are made, and we verify contracts, et cetera. And so we try to make sure that everything is well taken care of and accounted for.
And they also come with 5-year plans, so they're looking ahead always.
Correct. Each year they do.
Yeah.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any comment?
Mayor, I think that's an excellent summation. The whole point of the public improvement districts is to allow a particular neighborhood or business development to establish and maintain amenities that are above those that would typically be provided by the city. As such, they are self-governed. They put these together, they bring these back forward through city staff and ultimately to you each year for approval and assessment.
Okay. Is there any comments other than what we've heard? Not entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would move we approve ordinance number 7344.
A second.
All those in favor of ordinance number 7344 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7345. This is first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying the annual property assessment for the Tutbury Public Improvement District, PID. The Tutbury PID is located in the Tutbury subdivision of southwest Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Tutbury Public Improvement District Board of Directors. Are there any comments or questions about the Tutbury PID from the audience and from the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7345.
I second the motion.
All those in favor of ordinance number 7345 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7346. This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Colonies Public Improvement District. The Colonies PID is located in the Colonies subdivision in southwest Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Colonies Public Improvement Board of Directors. Are there any comments from the audience about the proposal from the Colonies PID? Comments from the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7346.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of ordinance number 7346 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7347. This is the first reading of an ordinance amending the boundaries of an existing city ordinance that prohibits open alcohol containers in outdoor public areas within the Central Business District, CBD. This proposed change to Chapter 10-3 of the Municipal Code would expand the boundaries currently in the ordinance as follows. North, railroad tracks. South, South 15th Avenue. West, Washington and Adams Street, and east, the railroad tracks existing. Conditions under which open alcohol containers are regulated will remain as stated in the present ordinance. The second change proposed in this ordinance would revise the number of and location of festivals allowed in the CBD by clarifying that up to 8 shall be allowed per year in the area bounded by 3rd Street Avenue and north to the north and 6th south 12th Street Avenue on the south. Are there any questions? Actually, Mr. City Manager, could you tell us a little more about the zone?
Certainly, Mayor, I'd be glad to. The basis for what you have today is an existing ordinance that's been in place for a long time. If you look at the map on the screen, the blue area is the area that's currently subject to such regulation, and it actually extends down the 6th Street corridor all the way to Western Street. That's what you have today. In effect, that ordinance says that you'll not have open containers of alcoholic beverages outside of private property. There are, of course, exceptions for licensed establishments and items such as that. The area in the red is the part of the geography that is being proposed to be added to those existing regulations. What you see there is being brought forward primarily for 2 reasons. I think that your northern boundary logically should be the tracks and maybe should have been the tracks for some time. You're only talking about the area between 2nd and just north of 1st Street. The remainder of that is part of what has historically been downtown and or the Central Business District. It's an area that is seeing revitalization. It is an area to where we have received numerous comments and requests from residents, from business owners, from people who frequent establishments up and down that area to have it added to the existing regulation. When we do these, we're actually governed by the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. They make a determination relative to state law and agency rules as to what you can do subject to regulating alcoholic beverages. In this case, the commission about 2.5 months ago said we would like to look at this. Your city staff prepared a petition or request to the TABC. They heard that last Tuesday, the 24th, and part of their hearing, their board decided that yes, this did meet their requirements. It was in the interest of public health and safety, and as such, you, this body, could consider adding that area in red to your existing regulation. You've already stated it well, but just to reiterate, This does not change the regulation, it merely changes the boundary to which it applies.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience in regards to this?
Trina Fournier, 4427 South Hayden. What's the object of this kind of restriction? Why keep people from having open containers on public property?
Well, I would tell you that from the time period that I came in office, we were petitioned and lobbied by citizens that said it was just a horrendous problem down there. Business owners, property owners, and residents that have expressed a total, a very strong interest in a total commitment to making this change. They feel that it's denigrating their property values. They feel like there's no ability to conduct business on a regular basis. They cite examples that are horrendous, and you can delineate them, but they are horrendous examples of behavior by people that are intoxicated, drinking on the sidewalk, and a number of other things. And we have to deal with it in those areas on a daily basis. We look at how the police have responded to that, the extra effort, and of course TABC looks at this very carefully to see we aren't being heavy-handed, but it's just a total response to what the community pursued us and asked us to do.
Can I ask, in the area that it's been in effect for a long time, has it been very effective? Has it kept those problems at bay?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. I didn't hear you. I apologize, but you're faded for just
in the area where it's already been in effect for a long time,
yes.
Has that been effective? Have those problems been eliminated or reduced significantly by that ordinance?
It's very carefully monitored, and I think it is effective in that area, although it wasn't extensive enough. So what our conclusion was as we studied this.
But do you have the information, like number, another rate of
I
that
don't
kind of
have.
thing?
I don't have here any empirical data.
Because I mean, if you're going to extend it, I would ask that you try to make sure that it's actually been effective in the area that it's already in. Because there's no point in moving it out if it's not helpful.
And we have. Certainly.
I think what you found is that it was effective within the area in question. It pushed it out right to the border of that area. And
So it's
that
just going to push it out again?
It magnified the conditions in the surrounding areas. And
Outside these areas, that's residential area, right?
Well, now we can't go, there is a restriction about commercial areas and business areas, and that's where we're really centered this on. We're not able to do this in residential areas at all, are we, Mr. City Manager? Isn't there a direct proportional restriction to that?
That is correct.
Yes.
I
Actually, I
understand.
had residents ask me to please do it in their area, and we couldn't.
Well,
So we watched the boundaries, and those boundaries are monitored by the TABC very carefully. Thank you.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying if you do that, you're just going to end up pushing them further out. It's going to spill over into residential areas, and now you're going to have residents having to deal with these problems that business owners have to deal with.
And those will be closely monitored by the police, and people will act if that's the case. But in many cases, because these places are less frequented in the later evening, things start during the day, and our conclusion was this was a valid request by the residents. Are there any other comments or questions about this ordinance? Any from the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would move we approve ordinance number 7347.
A second.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance number 7347. All those in favor of that ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7340, this is the second final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Greenways Public Improvement District, PID. The Greenways PID is located in the Greenways subdivision in southwest Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Greenways Public Improvement District Board of Directors. Are there any comments or questions about this ordinance as proposed by any of the people in the audience? Any by the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7340.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second for ordinance number 7340. All those in favor of that ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7341, this is the second final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Brennan Boulevard Public Improvement District, PID. The Brennan PID is located in the Brennan subdivision in southwest Amarillo. Are there any comments or questions about that PID as proposed? Asked out by the audience? By the commission? Not entertain a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7341.
Second.
A motion and a second for ordinance number 7341. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7342, this is the second and final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment of the Quail Creek Public Improvement District, PID. Quail Creek PID is located in the Quail Creek subdivision of northwest Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Quail Creek Public Improvement District Board of Directors. Are there any questions about this ordinance number 7342 by the audience, by the commission? Not entertain a motion?
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 7342.
One second.
We have a motion and a second on ordinance number 7342. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Ordinance number 7343. This is the second final reading of an ordinance adopting the 2012-2013 budget and 5-year service plan, along with establishing and levying an annual property assessment for the Redstone PID. The Redstone PID is located to the south of Coulter Street and Hollywood Road in Amarillo. This ordinance is recommended for approval by unanimous vote of the Redstone Public Improvement District Board, District Advisory Board. Are there any comments about this resolution, or this ordinance, by the audience? By the commission? Not entertain a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 7343.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second on ordinance 7343. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Resolution, public hearing, and 2012 program for project and approval of a grant application for fiscal year 2011-2012 federal and state grant funding for the Amarillo City Transit System. This resolution conducts a public hearing on the 2012 program and projects and authorizes the City of Amarillo to submit a grant application to the State Department of Transportation, TxDOT, for fiscal year 2011-2012 operating and capital assistance for the Amarillo City Transit Department. The city will receive an allocation from both the Federal Transit Authority and the Texas Department of Transportation. Proposed allocation is $7,505, more than the current fiscal year. Federal FTA funds, $2,702,544. ARRA funds, $695,912. TxDOT funds, $396,940. Local funds, $1,505,597. Total capital and operating, $5,300,993. Mr. City Manager, would you have any comment on that, or is there any explanation that's needed?
Mayor, this is the annual process through which we go that results in receiving the funding assistance necessary to operate your existing city transit system. The particular item today, you will be authorizing grant application for both the federal FTA funds of $2.7 million and your TxDOT funds in the amount of $396,940. The ARRA fund, or ARRA funds, those are funds that are on hand that were previously provided to the city, and we program to use those funds as part of the maintenance and operating part of the system, as we have done for the last several years. Mayor, the item is posted as a public hearing, so prior to your action on the resolution, would ask that we call for any comment or questions from the audience. Following that, any questions there might be, we would close the hearing and ask you to consider action.
Are there any comments from the audience in regards to this public hearing? thought I saw a hand raised.
I was just trying to figure out what ARRA was.
Okay.
He answered it,
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Trina Fournier, 4427 South Hayden. I have, during the work session, y'all were talking about that, and I talked with Mr. Frito about it before. Is there there's a limit, like a population limit to when, like a cap, you have to be under a certain population for you to receive these funds, yes?
Yes, actually, I was going to make a comment about that.
Okay. I just wondered if there's any projections about when we're going to reach that limit and what plans there are in place to compensate to cover those costs once that happens.
It's been a huge concern of mine since 2005 when I served on the city commission. It's indicated that once we reached 200,000, and we were fortunate in some ways that that wasn't reached in the last census. The definition of that was discussed and debated a little bit. And now apparently it's been concluded that we are able to stay under that level until the next census. And then officially, when we reach 200,000, we'll lose the funding. And I believe the funding amount is, in this case today, we would have not had $2,700,000 in funding. Is that correct?
Mayor, I think that's very close. When you hit the 200,000, you lose all of your operating assistance. If you stay under the federal guidelines, they'll continue to help fund your capital or buying your new buses. But actually operating the system, you lose that when you hit 200,000. So it's a significant portion of what's on there, yes.
So it is very counterintuitive to me that as you grow, you lose the funding you need to maintain your bus system. And I actually, it's a concern of mine and will remain a concern. Well, we won't be here in 10 years, hopefully. But we certainly have a concern about how to do this, because the only other mechanism for dealing with this in our situation today would be to raise the property tax to fund this, because we're not allowed with our tax structure to instigate a metro tax. So that's the other option, but we're already at the limit of that.
That's correct, Mayor. Your local money that it would take to make up the loss in the federal funds would be general fund dollars. So it would either have to come from new tax revenue or some other program that did not get funded.
And this would take, in this case, about 4 cents.
For 3 to 4, correct?
3 to 4 cents. So your question is very pertinent to me. It is to the city, and it certainly is to the residents that use our transit system. I referred earlier in a question in the work session to our manager of transit, Judy Phelps, who I think is a saint. She does a phenomenal job with a limited budget to provide transportation to people who are very much in need. And she has updated that, but the fact is, this will simply gut our system when that happens. It will be very difficult to maintain the effort we have, which obviously we do a good job, but I don't think it's adequate for what we have today, for the needs today, for public transportation. So any ideas or any pressure we can take, this is federal funds. Certainly, I think there's going to be others of those funds at risk, but I think it's a valid question, something we should be very concerned about as a community and plan towards the future, which, 8 years from now isn't that far. And if we have that bus system gutted, it will create problems for a multitude of people.
So are there plans with the city? I mean, are there things in the works to try and make that more profitable or to?
No, there's no ability to make it more profitable, and I would not answer too quickly, but I'll tell you, I looked at that very closely when I was a commissioner, and our bus system is probably one of the most efficient for what it has. If you talk to our manager of that system, she does a phenomenal job. It's just an incredible problem that we will face, and I see, as we indicated, there really is no other source other than general funds, which means property tax. So I would hope that there could be some other avenue to do this, but I see no other avenue, and I think it's one of the things we have to think about as we look at what our structures are going forward as we deal with city problems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about this item? Any other for the public hearing? If not, I'll call a close to the public hearing, and we'll act on this motion or this resolution. So I entertain a resolution, motion about the resolution.
Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution for the public hearing on the city transit system.
And I would second that, along with approval of a grant application.
All All those in favor of the resolution as stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Appointments to boards and commissions. Appointments are needed for the following boards and commissions. The Canadian River Municipal Water Authority 2-year term. Do we have any nominations for those for that appointment?
Yes, Mayor, to a Grimoire, I would recommend Dr. William Halliburton for that position, which would be reappointed.
A second.
We have a motion and a second for Mr. Hollenberg to be reappointed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Consent agenda. It's recommended the following items be approved, that the city manager be authorized to execute all documents necessary for each transaction. Award self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, repair parts supply agreement. B, approval of tax increment reinvestment zone number 1 incentive project. C, approval of tax increment reinvestment zone tiers 1 incentive project. And the last item, D, is approval of economic development agreement, convention center, hotel, and parking garage, Wallace Jolly Development Partners, LP. Are there any items that need to be removed for separate consideration by the commission? Not, I'd ask for a presentation by our tiers, and that would, in this case, be Mr. Brown, who's the chairman of the tiers. Could you tell us a little more about those two projects, please?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, there are two separate agreements brought forward to you today, which will execute on the charge that you laid on the commission, on the tiers board, all the way back in December of 2006. There are 4 major goals, and 3 of those are reached today with these presentations. Bring forward retail development, hotel development, and a ballpark. We believe all of those will be advanced by the agreements that are brought forward to you today. The larger agreement is the one that provides a $2.7 million incentive in order to speed the construction and completion of the hotel, parking garage, and ballpark complex that you're considering later on your agenda here. The tiers part of that project is strictly limited to the streetscape in the public right-of-way. This is consistent with the expenditure of tiered project funds on other projects. And so the street lights, the trees, the park benches that you have seen before, that you see actually out there now, it's the same kind of thing that the tiers money would be used for. This would be implemented through the local government corporation. The local government corporation is the one that interfaces with Wallace Jolly to see that the hotel gets built and presumably later the ballpark is built. And so this is one government entity, the tiers board, putting its money into a separate bucket, which is the local government corporation, which is part of the funding which will cause the hotel to be built. Now, this is a large commitment for the tiers, largest commitment we've ever made, probably the largest commitment we will make for some years to come. But we believe this is key to the overall strategy that this commission charged us with in 2006. And this is a big day for the tiers board and for the city of Amarillo and for people that are interested in making something happen downtown. The actual funding of that is not likely to occur for a couple of years because all that planning that was talked about earlier and then the construction of the facilities themselves will happen first. So the actual money will not be coming out until you can already see buildings rising up out of the ground. The second component is a separate agreement, and this agreement is between the tiers board, tiers, and Wallace Jolly. And this agreement is patterned after a number of other agreements we've done. For example, the one that we did with the Courtyard of Marriott. This is the kind of agreement that provides if you build a facility, that is, if you build a hotel, and if taxes go up, and if those taxes are paid and collected, then 90% of the taxes on this facility, the hotel, will be rebated to Wallace Jolly. In this case, that is not likely to be as large a number as you might think. because the interest that is owned by Wallace and Jolly is only a leasehold estate because the ground is owned by the city. It is also uncertain exactly what the tax status will be of that facility. From our perspective on the tiers, that's not important. What's important is to make it easier for them to gain the financing, which will make the overall project take place. And by putting in place a mechanism which will provide for a 90% rebate of those taxes, if there are taxes, then they don't have to plan for some other way to finance that part of the overall project. So again, this is consistent with what the tiers is tasked to do under the statute, which is to help provide a gap financing which will make the project take place. So we have two separate agreements with two separate entities which are intended to execute on the charge that you recently that you put on the tiers board in December of 2006. Any questions?
The only thing I would comment is that you did make a correct comment. You said if taxes go up, but I do want to be sure that we identify we're talking about property values of that area. We are not talking about a raise in taxes from a raised rate. We're talking about cumulative values increasing and thereby filling those coffers more. And we congratulate you on your work because this tier zone is the only one last year in the state of Texas that had increased value. And it consistently has done that. And we reversed a trend that was in place for over 20 years with declining values. And it has gotten to the point where it's getting close to the rest of the city. So we are reversing a trend. It's a long-term project. But I want to also personally thank you publicly for your work in regards to tiers. But not only that, in this LGC and defining these documents we acted on earlier. So Richard, Mr. Brown, thank you very much for your efforts.
If this rebate is only on this hotel, so it's only if the hotel is built, and therefore the taxes go up and collected, so it's not a burden on anyone else for this part of the rebate.
Right. Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions or comments on the consent agenda as presented? Please.
Kathy Altman, 2105 South Lipscomb. My question is why this money needs to be pledged on the streetscape at this point, both by the city and by the center city. I mean, you're talking about not even beginning construction until 2013 and not ending it until 2015. How do we know what the economy is going to be like at that point? And to me, these are extras. These are not necessities. And so we're pledging to do something in 2012, and we don't even know what the finances will be in 2015. So, I mean, I question the necessity of deciding on this at this point.
Ms. Altman, maybe I can answer part of that, and I'd ask that others might participate in this answer, but my belief is that we acted on the design standards, which are not looked on as extras, and they are part of the requirements of these new facilities. And this is an important component for the developers to go out and seek funding. And if they can see that this is solidified, it's basically guaranteed that it will be there, it adds to the ability for them to gain the other substantial funding for the projects that are proposed. Would anyone else like to add to that? Is there any other consideration?
Well, I think it's pretty clear from the development agreement between the LGC and Wallace and Jolly that these funds will not come to bear unless the structures are actually built. These are not being spent up front. These are being spent at the end of the day. And therefore, if the projects ultimately don't come to fruition, the city and the LGC I should say, and the tiers will be able to recapture that revenue. So there's no commitment really up front.
But it does give the developer an absolute guarantee that we are participating at a level of basically contracting. Is that correct, Richard? That's what it is. Thank you. Good question. Thank you, Ms. Altman. there any other questions about these items?
Trina Former, 4427 South Hayden. I have a question about how this will affect any other applications for this kind of streetscape assistance for any other business downtown. Is that going to affect, the ability for that anyone else to get those funds as well?
Can't spend it twice.
Well, will there still be funds available for other businesses to apply for?
As it grows, there will be other funds available. This pretty much is the extent of what's available to move forward.
For how long?
No way to project because we're projecting the future. The growth, obviously, we want it to be for a very short time and add more funds, but we would not project the future in that way. And there, another reason why we want to be sure we guarantee this while we have the ability to do that, so we can take these next major steps we make commitments to and fulfill our commitments as much as we possibly can. Commissioner?
I was just going to say, this isn't the only place that has gotten the TIERS fund for streetscapes. There's a list of places that have benefited from these TIERS funds for streetscapes.
There's really a great, excuse me.
In the past, right? But just in the next year or two, is this going to drain that fund?
We don't know what else will be approved by the TIERS board or projected. We'd love to have more things proposed. And really, not to be flippant, but we'll have to deal with those as they come up and they're valid projects and are funded and are ready to go to the next step. So we think that this is a great way for us to proceed. I get excited when I go out and start to count the number of light poles and all the other things that we begin to take for granted. But if you just look for those new light poles, you really see a tremendous change and look around the areas that they're in and see what's going to happen.
The other comment I was going to make is Mr. Brown had said this was a very important day for the TIERS, and that's because the City Commission, the goal was always to create a spark, to get things going downtown. And we think that other businesses will come in, there'll be a lot of additional revenue, there'll be an increase in property values, and we think other funds will follow that in the future and give the TIERS potentially more operating revenue to bond more projects out in the future.
Trina, let me give you an example from Oklahoma City. About 12 years ago, they voted with one vote to fund $392 million worth of projects. I believe that's the right number. And they would do that as they collected. They have a different mechanism for collecting it. As they collected, they had a priority list of things they would do. As they collected, they take those off. Now get this number, $392 million of investment by that city. Of course, we aren't the size of Oklahoma City, we understand that. But they have had an investment from private people of $315 billion to follow on. So while we can't predict the future, we can project that this is going pretty well.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fansler, and my purpose today is to...
Ma'am, would you mind stating your address? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, 201 South Tennessee.
Thank you very much.
My purpose today is for commending and appreciating the mayor and city police for cleaning up the graffiti in our city.
Ma'am, could I ask you, if you don't mind, to wait until our comment time at the end of the meeting? I hate to be rude.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're almost to that.
Okay.
So stand by. We don't mind getting a compliment.
Okay.
But we really are at the wrong point of view.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. Are there any other questions or comments in regards to the consent agenda as it's been read today? If not, entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that motion.
All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. This is the conclusion of the agenda for today's meeting. We will move back into executive session. But right now, it's customary for our city commission to allow citizens of the community with matters pertaining to city policy, programs, and services to speak to the commission. And ma'am, the floor is now open for your comments, and I'd please invite you up first. Thank you. So you and forego you giving your name and address again if you'd just like to comment. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Sarah Fansler, and I live at 201 South Tennessee, which I grew up in that area. But I do want to commend the mayor for implementing cleaning up the graffiti. I have been tagged twice, but the city responded very quickly and has repainted it. And I do appreciate that. And I attended about a month ago, my first meeting, and you were absent, but anyway, I'm wanting to know what progress has been made for trying to clean up some of the boarded houses out in San Jacinto area. And I have one right next door to me. I have trapped 3 cats on Sunday, and you know what, that's not my hobby at all. This house should be condemned and torn down. And the man that owns it lives in a very expensive house. He has a whole lot of property out in San Jacinto. I gave the addresses before. I live at 201, and this vacant house is 203 South Tennessee, south of me. His name is Ken Neely, lives in a very expensive home. And he has numerous property out in San Jacinto. I don't know about other areas. But anyway, there was another house that he moved in, and I gave that address. It's on Maryland. And it never, I guess he gets a break on taxes because he doesn't rent them. I mean, he hasn't ever rented that one. The one next door to me he has, but it hasn't been rented in probably 5 years. And I grew up in this neighborhood, and there are some decent houses, and there's some really crummy ones. But I think that we need to check this out and get something done, and I would appreciate it.
And I might comment that we have, by the suggestion of city staff, sped up the project for condemnation tremendously. We will continue to follow up on that because we get constant comments by citizens to take good care of their property, and their property is denigrated by their neighbors who don't care a hoot.
Yeah, I wish I had the money and I'd buy up a lot of them, tear them down.
I'd also like the city manager to comment for public record what pains cause us to be able to deal with this issue. The things that draw attention, like not securing your home.
Okay, see if I can speak to that. I took down the address of the one on 203 South Tennessee. Do you have the Maryland address at the top of your head by chance?
Do what? No, I do have it written down at home. It's
Get it to us.
It would be in the 84 North Tennessee. Maryland. I can get it.
We'll get on that one.
Okay.
It's in that neighborhood.
Okay.
We'll get on it.
Well, and
What causes us to be able to proceed with houses like you're describing, maybe at 203 Tennessee? Homes that are obviously vacant, and then if they're not secured, if people are able to get into them. Conversely, if they have secured them and people have then made themselves a new entrance, which they do.
Well, I've had mine secured with Rottweiler, but now I just have a cat.
And we find that, we'll work on that. Now, per state law, and Texas is very pro property rights, and I think at the end of the day we all agree with that. Per state law, we have to provide a notice to the owner. This is the condition of that property that's a danger, and you need to remedy that. They have then the opportunity to do so. If they fail to do so within the time period, we can start the process. That's what the mayor was referencing. In the past, that process was entirely too lengthy, and it allowed too many outs for a property owner where they could do some little things that caused us to go start all over again. And it really got to the point to where it was just, we were incapable of doing it because of how it worked. In February, the commission gave us the new version of that. It does not allow the outs. It caps the time period. It's much better. You still have to give the owner an opportunity to address it, so we still will. Second thing that gives us the ability to do that is funding. Several years ago, we dramatically reduced the funding for the condemnations. I didn't announce this in your work session, Mayor and Commission, so I apologize, but one of the things that you'll see in this year's budget is we're restoring a large part of that funding. San Jacinto was an area of interest, so we'll start working on that, and we'll hit this one that you mentioned. We'll get somebody by there and take a look at it. But in general, they keep the weeds down, keep the grass down. It's not full of stuff that's dangerous, couches that have been left out in the yard, stuff like that, and it's secure. They're entitled to keep it.
Well, I live on corner of South,
Second.
West Second, and they go down the street to go to San Jacinto Park all the time. My garage sits way back on the alley, and the police notified me first of this second graffiti. They had already, I went to church and I didn't know it was there until I got home, and my neighbor told me that the police had already been out, had already taken pictures, and they gave me the police report. And there were, mine was, I'm lucky that it wasn't my car, like some of them. And they had, this is a couple of years ago, they had hit my area and Jim Lake, the Jim Lake area, and shoot out the car windows, and I had that done. And they did catch those guys. So hopefully, you know, I don't know if this is a gang. I don't think this really was. I think it's just bored kids. They don't have good.
Well, they're destroying somebody's property, and I think the mayor and others have been very deliberate in that message.
They can't pay any restitution because they don't have the money. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else, please? Mr. Abraham?
Alan Abraham, 7205 Southwest 35th Avenue. Mayor, Commissioners, there is in the Wallace Pajali developer agreement of February of last year, a August 31st deadline. It has some benchmarks as to progress. Today's the first time I've heard that their funding is underway, and we've taken public steps to encourage that. So my next question is, what is the meaning of the August 31st, 2012 deadline in terms of the Wallace-Pajali agreement? And I'd like that publicly aired in some appropriate venue. I'm not sure you have to answer that now.
We may be able to answer that. Mr. City Manager, or do you think it's apropos to?
I'll take a crack at it. Marcus, you might have to jump in and help me. The original master developer agreement that was approved February of 11 is the one I think you're talking about that has
15.
February 15th of 2011.
2011, I'm sorry, yes.
That's got that August deadline that you're referring to, right?
This is pretty tough benchmarks, yes.
Yeah. Okay. That developer agreement had certain conditions that had to be met. And of course, that August 31 was kind of a deadline at the end of that. The execution, the approval, and the ultimate execution of that lease and development agreement that was referenced in the discussion earlier pulls that out, satisfies those conditions, and now they have a whole new set of conditions that they have to meet. The two dates that are in the lease and development agreement that I think and the first one actually is the big one. 2 dates. One is the conditions to commencement. That's you guys have to have, it's not just them, it's the public both, but you guys have to have all of these things done. You have to design the project, you have to present the budget, you have to have real, blueprints, plans, specifications,
and financing.
And financing, and there's the key, you have to have financing.
And
and Alan, it's all in there. It's all in there. That has to be satisfied and publicly approved by the local government corporation November 1, 2013 or prior.
Thank you.
If that's not done, then the second date doesn't happen, but the second date is the initiation of actual physical construction activities, and that's December 3rd. December 31.
One more time, November what?
November 1, 2013.
Thank you.
The second is December 31.
Thank you, Mr. Abraham. Any other comments?
Go ahead. I'll make it on my way up.
Gary Landley, 4802 Carroll Lane. And yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, my wife works at the MACC, the MAC, and they take their children over to the park on, I believe Sam Houston's the name of that park. And the CDC would not allow the children to go there because it said it's unsafe. And I was wondering if y'all had heard anything on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, sir. You said just fade it out. If you could get a little closer to that mic. I just
Little
couldn't hear
closer?
you. Yeah, I just couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Good, sometimes I can't hear you. Got bad.
My wife tells me that too.
Yeah, I've heard that. Right there on Western, where that Sam Houston Park is.
Yes, sir.
My wife works at the MAC, and they take their kids down there quite a bit during the day for different routines. And they're under that CDC, I believe.
The MAC. Would you show everybody the line?
That's the martial arts. I don't know the last two. It's that martial arts place online, I believe.
Yeah, there's one online, yeah.
And that would be it. And do I have the correct name for that park right there on West?
I think you do.
And it was something to do, I believe, with concrete or concrete pillars, but I guess they work for the feds and so CDC. And anyway, they went, I guess, as inspecting the neighborhood there. And so they went around and they came back and told my wife that they couldn't use that till it's safe.
Okay, and this is something I've not heard of. I'll tell you what we might do. The gentleman that runs our Parks and Recreation Division is in the audience, behind you, kind of in a red shirt, Mr. Rod Tweed.
Okay.
If you would, when we're finished, please visit with Mr. Tweed, and if it's a park issue, he'll know. If it's instead something to do with a federal inspector, Miss Vicki Covey is over here. And she knows all those things. And I apologize, Gary, I was out of town yesterday. I've not heard this, but when we finish, they'll be able to help you.
And that's fine, because they just did it, I believe, yesterday. And so here they are with, I don't know, 50 kids or 75.
And they're telling you can't go anywhere in the whole park?
That's what we understand. They said they couldn't be in the park.
Who told you that?
Until that's, they have these people that come in, they'll pop up any time, and they're checking the kids.
Were they inspecting the martial arts facility, or were they inspecting the park?
I think usually they come in and they check that facility, and they just pop in anytime.
Do you know what agency they're involved with? You say when they, and I just don't know what they is.
I'm sorry?
You say they appear, just sort of come out. Do you know what agency they're involved with? Are you sure it's a city agency, or do you know?
Well, it's the government, I guess. Well, if you worked in these places where they have the kids, you know, and they have their inspectors, and they check, you know, the MAC and see if it's safe or anything going on, if they have enough people there with the kids. And then during the day, they take them to the park and let them play and do things like that. And then, now this part I'm talking about is the, where they have the children, the children's programs, not the regular
So we get clarification. Do you mind if we visit after the meeting with Mr. Tweed and or with Vicki, and we'll try and clarify what it is and try and get you an answer?
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, please?
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Carl Taylor, Reskine, 721 Short Street. This is, I guess, a little follow-up about the graffiti in town. There is a wall 1 block east Washington, yes, and you might be aware of that. And it is frequented quite often with individuals with spray cans. And lately, recently, it had curse words on it with a citizen here in Amarillo, and we take our children walking in that area, and it's a concern of ours, you know, that we see that. I was wondering, and I know it's a voluminous task to deal with graffiti and especially this wall. Is there anything that could be done to cut down on that so that, well, I guess you'd have to cut the graffiti out completely to get the cuss words, you know, totally erased. But is there anything that y'all have brainstormed on or thought about that we could do?
My answer would be that that's private property, and that individual, Mr. Jeff Blackburn, invites people to come and do that to his property. He has an open invitation for them to come and put whatever he wants. That does not then fall under our graffiti ordinance, which restricts people damaging their property, wandering around with a spray can. But to that point, we are concerned about what happens because these individuals that seem to do this do not paint within the lines. And so the entire neighborhood's been defaced, and I would support any effort to clean that up. But actually, he would love to have us pursue him and say he can't do that. And you know, even under the sign ordinance, which I sort of looked at, he'd probably just take us on over that. So it is sad, and I would tell you, they've questioned my heritage on that wall many times. And it's sort of a little bit ridiculous, but it is horrible for children to have to walk past what's on that wall. And I don't know, Mr. City Manager, Mr. Attorney, could we?
Well, Mayor, my understanding is it is a public invitation. Mr. Blackburn allows anyone to come on that wall at will. I would encourage anybody that doesn't like the first word to go by there and paint it out. That's your contribution to the wall. It's free for me or you to go by.
I was wondering what would happen if I painted it with lard and see if it made it any harder. That's for
them to do that.
And I really don't want to start the war with him.
Right. Well, I think under the penal code for the state of Texas, the cuss words being exposed is against the law. And I'm not sure what the exact penal code is there, but
there's an issue of free speech, unfortunately, and we have someone that is pretty versed at that owns the wall.
Yes.
And so I wish that someone could come up with a creative solution to fix this, but you know, I can't so far tell you what it is. Although very much would encourage the rest of the neighborhood to help clean up, and we will assist them any way we can. And we have found that if you take it off 2 or 3 times, it stays off, but they have people in the middle of the night coming from everywhere and raiding. It's the goofiest thing I've ever seen in this town. Not much we can do about it at this point.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mayor and Commissioners, my name is H.C. Moore, 7710 Pebblebrook in the Greenways. And my first issue or question is that I'd like to thank you all for your job that you did last year with helping the city conserve water, your ever-drop counts. My question is, what happened this year? I know we got a little bit of rain, but I don't know about y'all, but it's pretty dry right now. And I would encourage y'all, and maybe you're doing this, and I just haven't seen it in a paper, but I'd like to see you get back on the ever-drop counts and even publishing how much water we're using, because my wife and I, who's in the audience with me, we try to do the best we can and monitor our sprinklers and water on the days we're supposed to and keep the watering down, but we see lots of commercial banks, I won't name any, but banks and residents that just let the water run crazy, and real estate companies that are overseeing houses that are foreclosed or whatever, and they just don't seem to listen. I've called one bank like 3 times, and I've called a real estate company 3 or 4 times within the last couple of weeks, and it's like, you know, like water on the duck's back, as they say. So I'd like to see you do some more, because it is critical here. My grandson may not have water when he gets my age.
A couple of things. We first of all encourage that kind of effort by citizens, and we would ask you to call the city's line, and our departments will visit them. They'll hang a tag on their door saying that they're wasting water. Last year, with voluntary efforts, we were able to lower our consumption by 8 to 9 million gallons per day. And that was voluntary efforts. We redid the contingency plan, which is required by the state. We have to live within those guidelines, and because we produce a great amount of water in our city, we don't fall into an area that we can do mandatory restrictions under those guidelines. But we would much prefer to do voluntary restrictions and to make the efforts. Now, we are starting another campaign, and I promise you, I won't ask you to wash your clothes by hand this year. I don't know if the commissioner agreed.
Well, I can't say that I agree with all of your ads.
I understand. Well, we were kind of new, you know, we were getting our feet wet. So,
No, we were keeping our feet dry.
we're keeping our feet dry. So I would tell you that we are starting that again. We actually taped some, and we're going to start another PR campaign. But really, your efforts here today are probably the best method for us to get coverage and to get hope that people will watch this. And I would say to the corporations that thumb their nose at this, make it public. Tell the city, I'll say their names publicly. I mean, in most cases, our corporate citizens are pretty darn good. We have 10 top water users that all agreed last year to reduce their water consumption. And they did a very good job. But I also think it's important that everybody look at that, because in some cases, these corporations aren't there at 5 in the morning when their automatic sprinklers go off, and they get there at 8, they can't tell. Yet there was a Old Faithful geyser in the middle of their property, and they didn't know about it. So we would encourage you to keep up that effort. We will help you with that if you'll get in touch after. Yes, Mr.
If I could put in kind of a shameless plug for the awareness part of that, Mr. Moore. We do publish water use every day. It's on the Every Drop Counts website. When you leave today, if you have just a few moments, if you stand out in those lobbies, did you see on the monitors where that was? So we put that up. But once a month, the first Tuesday of every month, City Commission meets in the evening. And since we entered high water use times this year, we bring in our conservation people, one of them sitting in the front row over here. We bring in our water production people, and they provide the commission and the public an update. How are we doing? How does it compare to last year? How does it compare in total to the 5-year average? You know, 2011 ruined every average on the books, but we do show that. So next week, we'll have that back out. We'll talk about total water use. I can tell you up through July, we were over 2 billion gallons to the good, or 2 billion less than we had been using.
That's good.
I'm not quite that confident after the last probably 2.5, 3 weeks. We've been up around that 80 million gallon a day range, and we'll probably be there all week just based on the temperatures. But if you have the time, we'd really encourage you to come back and take a look at that. Those folks will be able to visit with you, and we'd love to hear any ideas that you have. But we will follow up with businesses if you get with us.
Well, when you were publishing it in the paper, it was a little bit more evident. And I'm obviously by the color of my hair, you can tell I'm not an iPhone kind of person. And I don't always go to these websites and everything. I still struggle with all that. But the paper was a little bit more visible, and I think it probably catches more people.
We'll be glad to ask them if we can get that to run again.
And if I allow another comment, it has to do with the greenways bid.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yes.
Bids in general.
Sure.
I've heard what Commissioner Eads was saying a while ago about bids. In theory, what you're saying is a PID is a self-governing body representing the residents of that area. In theory, you're right. In actuality, I do not agree with that. I have been on the board of the Greenways Homeowners Association. We've lived in the Greenways for about 6 years. I have never been notified of a PID meeting. Get lots of notices for their increases since we've lived there, but never for the PID meeting. As I said, I was on the HOA board of directors, and we're supposed to have 2 people that represent the HOA on the PID board. I couldn't tell you who they were, never even heard it discussed as their appointment. And so 2 of the people represent the developer, not the citizens of that little community. 2 of them represent the HOA, and 1 represents, I understand, the original landowner or trustee. So I didn't get up a while ago because I understand it was already a done deal and there were bonds. However, I will say that the person that represents, that a person representing the developer didn't say anything about bonds when she was trying to justify why they wanted to go up. So I was totally confused. Sure. But I let it ride. But there is a problem there, is that the PID people, the PID board doesn't seem, at least in our case, to represent the citizens. We are, like you said last week, the beef is with them, not with you. We are going to start trying to do some work. Thanks for listening.
Comment from?
Yeah, I would say just one thing is Ms. Muff London, who's the administrator of the Greenways there, was here last week, and she very closely encouraged anybody who had any questions. I would certainly, if I were you, get a copy of that charter and see as a homeowner in the Greenways what your options are.
Say that again?
I'd get a copy of the charter for the pit from the administrator of the Greenways and see what your rights are as a property owner.
Yeah, I think it's actually called a petition, is it not? Yes. I made that error. I said charter earlier, and it was corrected. It is a petition. Now, I understand also, and I hope that somebody could do something about this legislatively, but there is no legislative requirement for the governing board to communicate with the homeowners. And I don't know a solution to that, and honestly, we aren't trying to, we don't want to delve into running that pit. That isn't our purview. We want to act on dealing with the tax and disseminating it as we're instructed to do. But I would encourage people to deal with the legislature on that. I don't understand that. They don't have to communicate back and forth. A little surprised. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any comment about that?
Well, we as, at least some of the citizens that are a little bit, unhappy with the increases, because, I mean, this 7% increase that you just approved is just, we had like 7% over the last 2 years, so.
Well, and if you look, they have to project 5-year plan, and there are projected increases each year for the next 5 years, so I would suggest now's the time.
The people that are opposed to this, or at least question what's going on.
Sure.
Maybe we're spending more money than we need to right now. Anyway, we are trying to get hold of the board, and we're going to just kind of force ourselves in on their meetings. This doesn't matter.
Don't blame you. Thank you. Any other comments from citizens? Welcome.
Carolyn Thornton, 1947 South Morris.
Thank you very much. No, I'm just kidding. That's short.
All righty now. Okay.
We'll give you a do-over, or us a do-over.
Okay. Well, I'm here for the same thing that I keep coming back for, and that is winter is coming. And I work with the homeless, and you all know that. And I am appealing to the city, please help me, or help them. I'm appealing to the community. I don't know what else to say about, we have to find a place for the people to go and pitch their tents before winter. With this regulation that you put through, that ordinance, it just made sense. Don't do anything on the public property. That just makes sense. Filth is not an option with me. It's just the bottom line. But what's happened here is that since that started, there's been repercussions, bad repercussions. I'm seeing more homeless people with bigger backpacks because they're carrying them with them. They're not putting them in their tents. More things are being stolen. Crime. I'm hearing of women that are getting attacked. We can't save the world. I already said that before. But what's happened is we have to help these people. That's why I'm appealing to you. I don't know where to start. I really don't. I've come to you all, and I know what you said. This is not a public, for me to come all, there's some things it's just not necessary to say, but I don't know where else to go. I really don't. I see what's going on in the streets. I see, because they don't have their tents. I see that. And before winter comes, we have to find a place for them to put their tents and be safe, because the cold is coming. And I'm telling you right now, just from my experience and just being with them the time that I was, the cold, they're so smart. They know how to fix these tents. It's just amazing to me to keep themselves warm. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I mean, we should be at home at that time, and later going to bed. But what's happened is the cold is coming, and there is going to be some bodies. I'm not exaggerating. There's going to be some people that are going to they're going to be frostbitten, and there's going to be some bodies, there's people that are actually going to die from the cold. And I hear that over and over again about a choice, but they're real. These homeless people that live in these tents are real people, just like you and I. They really are. And this is where they live. And their homes have been taken away from them. And I brought it up before. I'm going to bring it up again. It's true that you can go to private people. But guess what? I'm finding out on the streets, and I'm hearing from people that there are people that I get one beat. I'm hearing on the streets, what I'm hearing is that there are people that want to go ahead and give a piece of property for this. And I already talked to Vicki Covey about it. You know, they'll have to have certain things on it, bathrooms, they'll have to have, what is that, wrote it down, toilets and a dumpster. It just makes sense.
Carol, I'd be happy to have this discussion with you further.
Okay.
Your time is up.
Okay.
You have to watch that. I'd be happy to meet with you. Again, I go back to the private area. It is something that is, I think we need to state that it's not really the city's purview to deal with this. And we found when we dealt with the people in the tent city that there was a number of rooms available at the shelters that existed. And I know we've had this debate about their ability to
How
do
many?
those or not.
How many
But the
rooms?
fact is, it gets into social services that we can't solve. I was at a meeting of mayors yesterday. They talked about $20 million that was cut from the state budget to help homeless. And my concern is, if they just looked at their areas, that $20 million wouldn't go very far with with millions of residents in Texas. It's a problem that I understand your compassion for it. We understand your concern. We are fortunate in this city to have a lot of private agencies that can offer assistance, and we encourage you to talk to them. But in fact, I just don't see the ability for us to manage and deal with any part of a public area or a privately owned area that we manage to deal with this problem. So I thank you for your comments, but I don't want to encourage you that we have the ability to fix this.
No, but you can help me, point me in the right direction.
Happy to talk to you. We have a list of 12 agencies that were dealt with as the city helped resolve those problems. We'd be happy to take you to those places or refer you to them. This is a compassionate city that deals with this as well as any city. And I think that it is going to continue to be a problem, but it's not something we have no desire to help. It's just the ability to get it done is difficult. Thank you. Are there any other comments? If not, we'll move back to executive session. Thank you for your attendance very much. Thank you.